All right, the Masters is in full swing this week. We've got lots of golf to talk about. Thankfully, got someone who knows a thing or two about it all. New York Times bestselling author Michael Arkush joins the show. Michael, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Talk to us. You got this new book out, The Golf 100, a spirited ranking of the greatest players of all time. It could not be more timely. 3 years of your life to write. Why now?
Oh my God, 3 years. Yes. I did not have a life during those 3 years, by the way. I wanted to do something like this for the longest time, and I followed these guys as a kid, and then I got to know them as an adult. And now at this point in my life, I wanted to check in with them and see how they're doing, see how they viewed their setbacks, any regrets. Do they look at their losses any differently? And I also wanted to just find out where they all fit in the whole pantheon of golf.
One of the guys that you have listed in the top 100, Jim Furyk, you apparently said to him that you had this kernel of an idea, and his response to you was tough task.
Yes, yes, yes. And I seriously thought I was crazy. And, I finished, like, once I finished a couple of chapters, I go, wow, I've gotten so much. And I go, oh my God, I got 98 more to go.
I can't even imagine just like looking and it's like, I accomplished not very much yet. So, so,
Exactly.
so let's
That's
get
right.
into it. How do you define greatness? Is it wins, impact, longevity, something less tangible?
Major championships. I mean, we're talking this week. We have a major coming up tomorrow. That's really what has defined greatness in golf for the longest time. People don't remember who won the John Deere Classic. They remember who won the Masters, the U.S. Open, where the best players are in the field, where the toughest courses, where history's on the line. So I came up with a numerical system revolving around major championships.
You said that you started with the top two. Everybody's going to want to know, how did you decide Jack Nicklaus over Tiger Woods?
Numbers. Jack has, and by the way, Jack has 20 majors, not 18. I gave him the two US amateurs he won in 59 and 61. 19 seconds, nine thirds. The numbers just eclipsed whatever Tiger Woods achieved. Look at, I thought, you thought, we all thought that Tiger was going to break Jack's record. He didn't. He came up short, and we know a lot of the reasons why, the injuries, and of course all the other stuff that happened.
The way you did this book, you rank men and women together. There are no separate lists. It's a list of 100. How do you compare as you go through?
It was tough because I mean I compared women's totals to other women's totals, but where to put them on the list, I just decided, hey, look, I've been a golf writer for 30 years. I think I know the ability of all these players, their performance. So I slotted them in where I felt they belonged, leading by number six overall, Mickey Wright, who it's amazing. I've done all these interviews, and a lot of people say, who's Mickey Wright? One person said to me, I had to look up the guy named Mickey Wright. I'm not kidding you.
You're not going to find what you're looking for.
No, you're not.
Yeah, and the interesting part of this is, I mean, golf has such a long and storied history. It is amazing to me the number of names that as you go through the book, you may not even know. I mean, people don't know who Kathy Whitlock is. Tell us a little bit about her.
Kathy, 88 wins, 95 second places, never won a U.S. Women's Open. I had a great pleasure of talking to her three or four times in the middle of 2022, and then she passed away in late 2022, and it was really weird because I felt so sad. I didn't even know her that well, but it was like this group I was putting together. Also, Tom Weiskopf died during the process I was working with on the book, so that was actually very tough on me.
The golfer who you ranked 100
Yeah.
has a rather interesting story as well.
A Philadelphia connection, yes. Two-time U.S. Open champion, still to this day at 19 years old, the youngest Open champion ever. And then he went through a lot of trouble. He lost a lot of money in the stock market, was in a ship that collided with a grain ship in the Atlantic Ocean after coming back from the British Open. Collapsed at the pro shop he was working in Atlantic City, and then was committed to a psychiatric hospital where he spent much of his life.
Another connection to Philadelphia is Jim Furyk, who I mentioned earlier. How did you arrive at Jim Furyk where he was?
Well, I did the numbers, and that's where he found it landed. Jim had chances to win other opens. I mean, he won the one in 2003, but he let a couple really, really good opportunities slip away. I think you remember the tee shot he hit at Olympic that hooked on the par five, and that cost him the possibility of a major. These are tough tournaments. I mean, you gotta deliver, and unfortunately, he didn't deliver more often in the Open.
Okay. Well, you talked to him before you wrote the book, when you had the idea for the book. Did you tell him where he was once you
Oh
wrote the
God, no,
book?
no, I didn't tell anybody where they were. You know what? No, no, no. In fact, the first time I told a person where they were was 2 weeks ago in Newport Beach. I went down and I heard Nicholas speak, and I saw him the day before with his PR guy, and the PR guy said, "So where's Jack?" And I said, "He's number one," and I handed him a book.
All right, so what's everybody's reaction been as they find out now since you've done the big unveil?
I don't know. I have not. No, I have not heard from one player. A couple players told me they really liked the book, but they didn't tell me how they felt about where they were ranked. I'm not. I'm tempted to ask though. That's for sure.
I think you have to. I mean, the next golf tournament that you cover, you have to go and just walk up to people and say, "Hey, what do you think?"
I
Wear a
got to tell
shirt.
you.
Wear a
I
shirt
got
that
to tell
says
you
"Ask me about your ranking."
exactly. I got to tell you, there was one player who's not on the list who I talked to, who called me up a few months later to ask where that person was on the list, and I said, "Oh, I'm still working on it." And I have not heard from that person, and I'm not going to call that person.
I was gonna say that's not somebody you want to talk
Just
to.
tell them you're working on a second book,
Yeah, yeah,
101 to
right.
200.
An
There you
addendum.
go. Exactly.
Were there people that gave you heartburn that you stayed up in the ranking? Should they be here or here? Or did it become clear cut to you as you were going through it?
It became clear cut because I went by numbers. I also had subjective bonus points. I didn't really agonize about the numbers. I did think about certain players that did not make the list and wondered, oh boy, people are going to react to that. Like Scotty Scheffler's not in this list. As great as he is, his numbers didn't reach that level, although I'm sure they will.
You know, anytime you do the rankings in any sport and compare generations, there's always the struggle of how would they have performed in a past era, or how would they have performed, how would older players have performed in this area? Did you consider the era when you were figuring this out, or were you able to figure out to just say, okay, this is how I'm going to do it in a vacuum? I'm not going to consider what competition was like back then, what golf clubs were like, what golf balls were like.
I did it in a vacuum. Yeah, I felt that you can only compete against the players of your time. How do you fare against them? And so, yes, there were smaller fields and less competition back in the Bobby Jones era and before, but those players could only go against those players. And so I did it that way. That would be endless if I tried to compare errors.
You mentioned Scotty Scheffler not being in there. What
Yeah.
modern players need to or have the best opportunity in front of them with a couple majors to really move up the list for you?
Colin Morikawa, John Rahm, Justin Thomas, and Scotty. Those guys really are at the forefront. Any one of them were to win this week, they would reach that level. Yeah. I have a rule. It's my book, so I came up with my rules. And my rule was any player who's won three majors from 1900 on is automatically in.
Who's the
Okay.
person that you consider the most underrated in your book?
This is strange, but Gary Player, even though he's ranked number 11, Gary Player has nine majors. He would have had a lot more victories had he played the PGA Tour more often instead of traveling around the world. I don't think there's anyone has logged more miles than Gary Player. 89 years old. We're going to see him hit the ceremonial tee shot tomorrow. He looks like he's 39 years old.
Well, if Gary, you know, as you were saying that, I was thinking about, you said that majors are the biggest component of this. So are there golfers that play on the European tour that are not, I wouldn't say punished as a result in the rankings because they don't play here, but ones that you didn't move up the ranks because they don't play, other than Gary Player?
Well, they just didn't have they didn't have the numbers. But yeah, they played a lot of their golf in the European Tour. And people like Nick Faldo, who's still high up there, he didn't really move over to the U.S. Tour until much later. Padraig Harrington didn't move up to the U.S. Tour until much later. So yeah, the best players in America right now. But for the longest time, Europe really had a lot of great players who didn't come over, and that changed. Yeah.
With the Masters this week, when you look at Augusta National, which of the legends in your book truly own the Masters in terms of not just performance, but presence there too?
Freddie Couples. He's only won once there, but he's played well a number of other times. and the fans just love him. And I don't think this is going to be his last time because everyone's talking about Bernhard Langer. This is his last time. But if this is not Freddie's last year, next year probably will be. And fans have always related to him. He's let them in, and that's a big deal.
It is interesting you mentioned Freddie Couples. For one of my lasting images of Freddie Couples is putting on that green jacket, even though he only won one time because of his popularity. Are there other golfers that you may think of and say they seem like they should be higher on the list because of their personality, but when you really sit there and analyze their stats, their wins, they're maybe not as good as they appear to be because of their big personality?
Well, Ben Crenshaw has two majors, two Masters victories, and everybody thought he was going to be the next Nicholas. And look at either any of the three of us would take two majors in a heartbeat, right? But so many of these players did not. It's strange to say this, but did not live up to their hype. We thought they'd be the next Hogan, the next Nicholas, the next Snead, whatever, and they did really well. But golf is such a demanding, tough game. You have to play your opponent, you have to play the golf course, and then you have to conquer your own demons. And that's what's so fascinating about this sport.
I'd have taken being allowed to step on a professional golf course. So don't even worry about winning. Were there any surprises that emerged as you researched? Maybe a story or a stat that made you reevaluate a player's greatness going through it?
Not really. I mean, John McDermott was a revelation. I'd heard about him, but I didn't know the whole story. There's players like Walter Travis and Jerry Travers and Leo Diehl. There are probably about a dozen or so players. I knew their names, but I didn't know what made them great. And learning about that, and also Walter Hagen, I knew how great he was, but I didn't know quite the kind of character he was. You know what he did once? He's got an 8-foot putt to win the U.S. Open. Okay, final hole. He goes and he has someone summon the guy he's tied with from the locker room, so the guy can stand there by the green to watch the putt. Wouldn't that be awesome these days if like Ernie Els when Phil Mickelson beat Ernie Els in 2004, if Phil had said, "Hey, someone go get Ernie from the putting green and let him watch this."
Social media would melt down if that
Oh, it'd be awesome.
encounter happened, and the memes of the faces of the people watching it would live forever.
Oh, it'd be beautiful. We should
As
get
you were
one.
researching this, what other great stories did you find out about golfers that you didn't know before?
Let's see. I knew great stories. Bobby Jones. I mean, I keep coming back to everything he did, calling a penalty on himself that cost him a U.S. Open. What he actually, I'm sorry, a British, yeah, U.S. Open. He actually walked out of a tournament, the British Open. He quit in the middle of the tournament. Bobby Jones, of all people, to do that, but that sort of just led to his greatness. That made him make sure that he was more of a sportsman from then on, and nobody was more of a sportsman than Bobby Jones.
We mentioned some of the modern golfers who didn't make the book. If you had to predict now, past some of those, who's the next golfer likely to shake up a future edition of the Golf 100? Not yet in their elite tier, showing
Yeah.
those signs that they could be there.
Oberg, Oberg, Ludwig Oberg. We'll see what happens this week. He came in second to Scotty before. He's a heck of a player. He won earlier this year. He's very young. But look, I mean, look how much it takes over the whole breadth of a career to get to pile up those kind of numbers. It is really, really tough. That's why greatness is reserved for a special group.
There are some golfers on this list that left us too soon. Did that factor
Yes,
into, especially with Payne Stewart? Obviously, Payne Stewart died in his early 40s.
right.
Had an amazing career beforehand. Was one of the most beloved golfers. Won two U.S. Opens and PGA. Never won the Masters. Did you struggle with where any type of projections if their career had gone on, or how
Yeah,
do you deal with that?
I did deal with that. Tony Lema, great young player, died at 32 years old in a plane crash. I gave him more points because of what I believed he would have accomplished. Young Tom Morris won four British Opens in the 1870s, 1860s and 70s, and then he died at the age of 24. Many say of a broken heart because his wife and child died in childbirth. Lorena Ochoa, okay, great player from Mexico, four-time LPGA Player of the Year. She quit at the age of 28. Byron Nelson got bonus points because he quit at the age of 34 to buy a ranch. So yes, I did factor in those considerations.
Well, quitting to buy a ranch. I don't know if you should give someone bonus points for
Oh,
that.
come on, come on. You know how much Byron would have accomplished if he had kept playing? Oh, gosh.
Jeff may quit the show now to go buy a ranch. I'll be
That's right, to go buy a ranch.
after
I'll
this.
give you bonus points if you go buy a ranch. Absolutely.
There you go. I'll give you bonus points too, Jeff. No problem.
Mm.
For the casual golf fan just tuning into Masters Week, the person who doesn't necessarily know all these people, what's the thing that you hope they take away from the Golf 100?
That golf didn't what golf wasn't invented with Arnold Palmer or Tiger Woods. Golf has been around for quite a while, and there've been all these great players who paved the way for the players of today. They didn't make tons of money. They didn't get national headlines all the time, endorsement deals, etc. But they were key. The players of today need to thank them for where they are at now.
See, you know what I'm going to take away from this interview, unless you say something really profound after this, is that how important majors are. Why is it that we can obviously the Masters, the golf course, the US Open, the golf course, obviously the golf course itself becomes a character in these narratives of what's important. But what is it about majors that makes them so important in where you are in the pantheon of golf?
Well, because we've established that because it's all about history. If there's any sport which resonates, which is all about history, it's golf because that's our only link to the past is these great players. Yes, it's true in other sports, but these are individuals, not teams. And so we can compare them much easier. And the Masters, of course, stands out because it's the same course now for 80 years. Um, we can think of Gene Sarazen's shot on the 15th hole or Jack Nicklaus's putt on the 16th hole. They all sort of form into our memory banks as we watch each tournament.
So as we go into the weekend, it looks like we're going to get good weather, hopefully some good stories. Who has the most to gain coming out of this tournament and coming out of this season of golf right now?
Oh, it's Rory. I mean, if Rory has not won a major in 11 years, if he were to win this week, it's going to be so popular to finally win a major after all that time and to capture the career Grand Slam. That would be a national story beyond golf if he were to win. I think, and then the other guy is Jordan Spieth, who's been in a slump for a while. If he were to win, that would also be big.
You know, if Rory wins, it's an international story. I mean,
Yeah,
Rory is
international,
one of the most
correct.
beloved golfers, has become one of the most beloved golfers in the sport. What what is it about if he hasn't won in 11 years, why does it's not just you, why are we hearing from everyone that this is the year that he can do it?
He's playing great. He looks like he's putting better. His approach game looks a little bit sharper. Mentally, he looks tougher, but he hasn't put all that to a test in a major. And that's why this week is so extraordinarily interesting because last time we saw him in a major in contention, US Open last year, he missed two putts down the stretch that I can't believe to this day he missed. Well, is that going to enter his mind coming down the stretch at Augusta? That's what's going to be great to watch.
I am curious. I know you look at this in the vacuum of wins and losses at majors. With the growth of all these different media, Jeff hates when I talk about it, but my wife and I watch Full Swing. She would never watch a golf tournament, but she will watch the personalities of the golfers and is very aware of Rory's chase for another championship here. Can you talk about the impact of that on rankings like this? Where people don't use just wins and losses, they go off the field because they see them so much more.
I get that. Look, I understand that we relate to athletes in ways beyond just the numerical accomplishments. There's a charisma level. There's personality involved. My job was to do numbers. My job was to really rank them that way. But I'm glad for Full Swing. I'm glad that there are generations of people out there who are attracted to the sport for the personality of the players. We need more personalities. That's why the whole live thing is so upsetting because we're robbed of personalities like DeChambeau on a weekly basis. We'll see him this week, but it's just too bad we don't see him more often.
You know, for the casual, actually not person who's not even a fan, they always ask me, I don't understand it. How can you go to a golf course? How boring is it? Can you explain to somebody, as somebody who covers golf, the beauty and how special it is to walk a course like Augusta?
And by the way, we
Oh
don't
my
agree with
God.
that statement. Jeff has gone
No,
to more golf
I've been to
tournaments.
Augusta.
So we don't get
Yeah,
that.
I mean, Augusta is on even just the way it's laid out and the hills. It's even more defined and beautiful than you see it on television. You feel the presence of Bobby Jones's ghost. It's remarkable. It's the one place I think I've walked where I'm happy even if I'm not playing. A lot of times I go to these courses and go, I want to be out there, right? And I did play Augusta once, by the way, which was an incredible treat. Yeah, I was really lucky. But no, it's special. It's beyond anywhere else. Absolutely.
All right. So next book, top 100 courses.
Ooh.
No, that's kind of been done. I'm not that fascinated by it. I got to get away from this top 100 thing or else I will never have a life again.
You'll be counting in your sleep.
Oh, no, no kidding.
Anything that you are watching for this weekend from the people that you have on your list that, we talked about Rory, but anybody else that you're kind of looking out for after watching everything?
Yeah, I'd like to see if Dustin Johnson can show some flashes of his old self. I'd like to see if Kepka is back on form after a really sort of mediocre 2024. And as I mentioned before, besides Rory, Jordan. I mean, when Jordan Spieth started out, we thought he was going to be an absolute superstar, and he's stalled for years now. He's only 31. He's got time, but he needs to start playing well.
The book is The Golf 100, a spirited ranking of the greatest players of all time. Michael Arkush, thank you so much for the time. We wish you the best of luck with it and can't wait to talk to you again.
Great. Thank you so much.